Julio Jones has been one of the most dominant wide receivers in fantasy football for the last decade. But now he's a member of the Titans. So, what's his fantasy outlook looking like for 2021? Let's talk with SI senior fantasy analyst Michael Fabiano for the breakdown. And Fabs, we know Julio, he's been incredible. But last year, he only played in like 9 games. He was battling injuries, and he had one of his statistically lowest seasons of his career.
Yeah, he started off the season strong. Remember, he had that big 24-point performance against Seattle. Then in the next game, played the Dallas Cowboys, dropped that pass from Russell Gage, and also got hurt, dealing with some lower leg injuries for the remainder of the campaign. As you mentioned, he missed most of the season, at least more than half of the season. He still averaged 16.2 fantasy points per game, but you also have to keep in mind he failed to score 8 fantasy points 3 times, and 40% of his point total came in just 2 games.
All right, let's learn a little bit about Julio Jones. Even though he's a seasoned veteran, 32 years old, finds himself on a new team for the first time in his career. What are some of the trends telling you about Jones this stage in his game?
Well, let's first look at Julio as a player, as a fantasy option, and he's been elite, right? 200 plus fantasy points 8 times in the NFL. He had 7 seasons with 250 plus points. He's entering his age 32 season, though, all right? And now that's not old by any stretch of the imagination, but it's older, let's put it that way. During the Super Bowl era, so since 1966, 24 wide receivers have scored more than 200 fantasy points in their age 32 season. That's 24 players in 54 years. Furthermore, just 4 of those instances, Bill, have occurred in the last 8 seasons. Larry Fitzgerald did in 2015, Andre Johnson in 2013, Wes Welker in 2013, and Julian Edelman is the most recent in 2018. So wide receivers entering their age 32 campaigns, the success has been there, but it hasn't been a lot of success.
All right, let's break it down from the Titans' perspective now. What do we expect to see? Because we know A.J. Brown is there. We know the Titans love to run Derrick Henry, the 2,000-yard rusher for Tennessee. What do we expect Julio to do in this offense?
Well, the Titans have a new offensive coordinator in Todd Downing, and he has only been an OC once in the National Football League. That was with the Raiders in 2017. That year, the Raiders, their offense wasn't that great. They threw the ball 61.1% of the time. That's not going to happen this season, not with Derrick Henry in that backfield. And let's do a comparison here. Last year, the Titans ran the ball over 50% of the time. They threw it 49.5% of the time. In Atlanta, where Julio had played for his entire career, well, last season, they threw the ball 62.1% of the time. That's a big gap in between percentages from one team to the next. You go from a team that threw the football to a team that's going to lean on the run as long as Derrick Henry is going to be 100%. And Julio is just going to struggle to see that 24% target share that he enjoyed in his last full season in the National Football League. And I get it. The Titans have a lot of available targets, but they've also got guys other than Julio Jones who are going to be competing for those targets. Of course, you mentioned A.J. Brown. Josh Reynolds is in the mix. Anthony Ferkser, the rookies, Des Fitzpatrick, Racey McMath. So I understand that Julio Jones is going to end up being a guy that you draft as a wide receiver too. He's coming off the board in the 4th and 5th round in most drafts that I've seen. But, you know, Bill, I'm worried that he may not even be as good as a wide receiver too in his age 32 season.
So that was the fantasy case against Julio Jones, the Titans wide receiver. Plenty more fantasy case against. You can check it all out from Michael Fabiano on Sports Illustrated. Go to si.com/fantasy.